Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 9 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 28-5 with this list, and as always I'll have the untapped link down in the description alongside the importable deck list if you want to try it out for yourself. And if you go down and click on the matchup data, you can see that I'm currently on a 15 match win streak as well, so I'm pretty sure I could have got even higher if I just had more time to grind. So the deck has felt really strong to me so far. So anyway, let's just get straight into it. So as the name suggests, this is an Eldrazi deck built around Echoes of Eternity and also running the more aggressive Linebreaker and Fleshraker. So I'm a really big fan of both of these cards, but I always thought it was pretty awkward running these two alongside Ugin's Labyrinth because, you know, if you're running these two and then Labyrinth and enough 7-drops for Labyrinth, you don't really have much room in the deck for anything else. And I don't really feel you need Labyrinth in a low to the ground Linebreaker and Fleshraker deck in order to have a good top end because of Echoes of Eternity. So this is kind of the card that we're mainly built around here. And the really nice thing about this card is it counts as an Eldrazi card, which means that we can use 2 mana off Eldrazi Temple to cast it. So in theory, we could just cast this on turn 3 if we have, you know, triple Eldrazi Temple or Utopia Sprawl into, you know, a couple of Eldrazi Temple, but it's actually very easy for us to cast this on turn 3 thanks to other cards like, you know, Malevolent Rumble, Sowing Mycospawn, Spawn, Glaring Fleshraker as well. So it's very easy for us to get this down early. And then the really nice thing about Echoes of Eternity when we're running Linebreaker and Fleshraker is it basically just enables you to OTK incredibly easily, especially with Linebreaker, because, you know, say we have one other Eldrazi in play. Usually you'll have more, but say we just have one, and we've got Echoes in play. If we cast Linebreaker, we get 2 copies of Linebreaker, and then both of those copies will trigger the haste ability twice. So say we've got, you know, one other Eldrazi, then we put 2 of these in play, that's 3, plus Echoes is 4 because that counts as an Eldrazi as well. And then we can give +4/+0 4 times because it triggers twice, which is almost good enough just if you know, give it to both of your Linebreakers to attack in for over 20 hasty lethal damage out of nowhere. And then Fleshraker also OTKs very easily if you have another card to cast afterwards, because if you cast a Fleshraker, you get 2 of them because of Echoes, and then if you cast another colorless card, you'll get a bunch of 0/1 tokens. You know, you'll get double of those tokens because of the Echoes, and then each of those tokens will ping 4 times because each of the Fleshrakers will trigger twice. Not to mention the colorless card will also be duplicated because of the Echoes. So Fleshraker, if you get 2 of them off Echoes into another colorless card, also pings for over 20 damage out of nowhere. So the really nice thing about this is that you have the Linebreaker and Fleshraker to just play fairly to close the game out quickly anyway. So you've got a fast low to the ground side of the deck that can go underneath the opponent, but if the opponent does get a foothold in the deck, you can then just go Echoes of Eternity, and if they don't kill it before you untap, or you have enough mana to do both, then you can just go Linebreaker or Fleshraker and just kill the opponent out of nowhere. So you're a fast low to the ground Eldrazi deck that also has kind of a combo win because of Echoes of Eternity. Now, the slightly awkward thing here is that obviously Linebreaker and Fleshraker are only 4-ofs, so if we're doing a lot of work to get Echoes in play, there's a good chance that you then won't have a Linebreaker or Fleshraker to follow up, and that's one of the reasons why I really like Faceless Agent in this deck, because running Faceless Agent, if we have Echoes of Eternity, if we play the Faceless Agent, it gives us 4 looks to find a Linebreaker or Fleshraker. Usually you want to go for Linebreaker because you don't usually have enough mana to go Faceless Agent into Fleshraker into another colorless card, but Faceless Agent, if we cast it with Echoes in play, it will put 2 copies of Faceless Agent in play, and each of those will trigger twice. So we have 4 looks to find a Linebreaker, so statistically very likely to find one. Then you cast the Linebreaker, we already have the 2 Faceless Agents in play plus the Echo, so that'll be +5/+0 on each of the triggers, which triggers 4 times, which is good enough to win. So Faceless Agent massively improves your chances of being able to combo off under Echoes of Eternity. And even outside of Echoes of Eternity, Faceless Agent has a lot of other utility in the deck as well, because it counts as an Eldrazi because it's a changeling, which means we can cast it off Eldrazi Temple on turn 2, which is huge. And then if we cast this on turn 2 and it seeks a Sowing Mycospawn, that's a really nice curve out, allowing us to cast Mycospawn on turn 3. But even outside of that, it allows us to find our Linebreaker and Fleshraker more consistently. It allows us to find them in multiples more often, which is really broken, especially with Fleshraker. Faceless Agent is also really nice alongside Fleshraker, because if we start producing a bunch of 0/1 tokens, if we have 3 in play, we can then just sack them to put the Faceless Agent into play, which can then find more Faceless Agents to keep casting, or find another Fleshraker to keep the chain going as well. So Faceless Agent really enables Echoes to be a consistent combo kill, but also just synergizes incredibly well and allows us to find our more high-impact Eldrazi more consistently. Not to mention, if we do find Sowing Mycospawn Spawn and we get an Eldrazi Temple, then having Faceless Agent to chain them together actually gives us a really good mana sink when we do have a lot of mana, access to a lot of mana as well, which is huge. So next up, we'll have a look at some of the individual cards. So Utopia Sprawl, I see as a staple, especially because we're not running Ugin's Labyrinth. It's very important to have good turn 1 ramp here. I did try some builds early on that weren't running Utopia Sprawl because it makes the mana base a lot nicer, not having to run so many forests. But I just felt like when you're running stuff like Ignoble Hierarch and Delighted Halfling as a 4-of, the difference between a Sprawl on turn 1 and one of those on turn 1 just dying to Fatal Push or just a piece of creature removal is night and day. Sprawl is so much better that it's worth having a slightly clunkier mana base to enable. And we've got a single copy of Ignoble Hierarch, which is mainly just here as a concession to fragment reality, right? We don't want the opponent being able to fragment our 3-drops and just us getting nothing out of the deal. And I prefer Ignoble Hierarch, over Delighted Halfling just because of the Exalted. Obviously Ignoble Hierarch can't produce colourless, which can be an issue sometimes, but it can produce green and red, which Delighted Halfling can't. And the Exalted is very useful, especially when we have Linebreaker in play. And we've also got 4 Dismember, which is another reason I really like this particular build, because the package of Linebreaker, Fleshraker, Agent, Mycospawn, and Echoes means that we have room, flex slots for cards like Dismember. And one of my goals with this particular build of the deck was to address some matchups that conventional Eldrazi decks are pretty bad against, like Auras, Wizards, Val combo can all be tricky, especially if you don't have much interaction. So having Dismember alongside Kozilek's Command as instant speed spot removal game 1 that's efficient enough to actually have an impact in those matchups, and then being able to board in Force Shoverside as well really helps to flip those matchups like Auras and Wizards on their head, which is a really big deal, I think. And then obviously we've got Malevolent Rumble, which is another kind of staple card in Eldrazi, incredibly generically powerful, but especially nice in here because the Eldrazi Spawn has good synergy with what we're trying to do, but it has so many high impact targets in this deck. Echoes, Mycospawn, any of our 3-drops are huge, and provides us with ramp into them as well, which is great. Then we've got Kozilek's Command, which I shouldn't have to explain. I'm sure if you've played any Historic recently, you know how busted this card, potentially the most broken card in the entire archetype. Gives us spot removal alongside Dismember, Graveyard Hate can be relevant, and the 0/1 tokens, especially alongside Fleshraker, gives us ways to just kill the opponent out of nowhere, which is really nice. Then Linebreaker and Fleshraker, kind of gone over them in terms of the combo, but these are just incredibly good fair cards as well. Getting these down on turn 2 really puts a clock on the opponent, and Fleshraker especially can really help us ramp on top of everything else, and even enable us to win when we're behind on board, which is huge. Then Faceless Agent, key cog in enabling Echoes to be a consistent kill, and obviously I've explained how it works fairly as well. Then Sowing Mycospawn, very nice at allowing us to get to Echoes of Eternity very easily. You're almost always going to be getting Eldrazi Temple. Now, one thing you'll probably notice is I'm not running any one-of utility lands in this deck, and I don't think we really have room at all in the main deck, right? I think if I was going to run a 24th land, it would almost certainly be a forest, because I'm slightly below what I would ideally want for Utopia Sprawl. So we really just don't have room in the main deck for one of utility lands. And then I don't really think it's worth running in the sideboard. I did test Blast Zone, I did test Bajuka Bog, I did test Ghost Quarter, a variety of utility lands, and I just didn't find myself tutoring them enough for it to be worth it. Now, I do think when I get to the sideboard I'll explain a bit more, but Surgical Extraction is the flex slot, so you could very easily run, 3 one-of utility lands in the sideboard if you want. I think Blast Zone is probably the most useful one from my experience, but so definitely consider that if you're a big fan of getting one-offs off Mycospawn. But for the most part, you're almost always going to be tutoring Eldrazi Temple, and then if we do have enough mana, I feel like Mirrex is a very nice card to get access to as well, especially if we have Fleshraker. So I didn't really feel like I was getting the one-offs enough for them to be worth running. But outside of that, Mycospawn just generically great. Very nice under Echoes, actually, because if you do have like a Linebreaker in hand and you've got 4 mana to pay for the Mycospawn, you get 2 triggers searching for lands, so you can just get an Eldrazi Temple and a red land like a Mirrex or a Mountain to then cast the Linebreaker, and then Mycospawn is 2 additional Eldrazi in play in order to provide an extra +2/+0 to the X amount, which is sometimes useful if the opponent has a lot of creatures in play. Sometimes you will need a big amount of trample to win the game the same turn. But, if you've played Eldrazi, you know how strong this card is, especially when you start getting the kicker off early and exiling the opponent's lands. It's pretty broken. And then kind of gone over Echoes of Eternity already, but the fact that this is Eldrazi and we can ramp into it off Temple is so nice as well. Then in terms of the mana base, 23 lands has felt like a good amount to me, especially when we've got Sprawl and Rumble to help find lands early on. Obviously we want 4 Eldrazi Temple, and then we ideally, I always want to try and be running 14 forests for Utopia Sprawl. Unfortunately, I can only fit 13 in here, right? We've got the Stomping Ground, the Forest, and then Prismatic Vista can find Forest as well, which is pretty big. But I felt like the one of Ignoble Hierarch was more important than the 14th Forest in here, and I felt like the 4s for everything else was more important. So slightly below what I'd like for Utopia Sprawl, but it's not been a massive issue for me so far. Then outside of that, the only other utility, or the only utility land that we're running in the deck is Mirex, and I really like this because it's basically Karplusan Forest, but it can only fix mana the turn it comes down, which isn't, that's not been much of an issue for me so far. But the utility that it provides on top of that is really, really nice, especially alongside Fleshraker, or even if you've got this in multiples. Mirex provides us with a token that can obviously start attacking, very, very useful against instant speed decks or counterspell decks, especially decks like High Noon and Control and Tempo decks, very useful. But it can just give you good reach as well once you've got Fleshraker. If you can get this in multiples because you're tutoring it off Mycospawn and you've got a lot of lands in play, activating it twice a turn when it's kind of a grindy long game can really help you push through those scenarios as well. So Mirex, is mainly here mainly here as a colorless land that can also produce mana similar to Karplusan Forest, but the extra utility this provides is really good, especially in some trickier matchups. So that's the main deck. Like I said, I feel like this deck is really difficult to take down because you're essentially a fast aggressive deck that has access to a combo finish, and you get to run all of the broken Eldrazi that are just some of the most generically powerful cards in the entire format right now anyway. So now let's move on to the sideboard. So starting off with Giant Cindermaw, which is basically here for the Val matchup. Now I think Val is a very tricky matchup for Eldrazi in general because they're typically either built to be very resilient to removal with protection effects, or they have a lot of ways to find the combo so they can play through one or two pieces of removal. And typically, Eldrazi doesn't have that much interaction, most builds anyway, and they struggle to close the game out quickly, which gives Val a lot of time to find the combo. Whereas Giant Cindermaw, we don't need to play on an interaction basis with Cindermaw in play. We force the opponent to have to interact with us because Cindermaw just shuts off their combo entirely, which is really big. So post-sideboard, we do transform quite a lot against Val because I also like bringing in Sheverside and Cindermaw. Cut the Echoes because we don't need to go that far above the opponent if we just shut off their combo. But Cindermaw, just really nice. And then obviously there are some other more fringe decks you'll come across that are built around life gain synergies where this can be nice to bring in as well. But mainly here as kind of a stopgap against the Val combo, which I have felt is a tricky matchup for Eldrazi in general. Then we've got 4 copies of Sheverside as additional spot removal, mainly for matchups like Auras, Wizards, Val combo, Yawgmoth sometimes as well. Just any deck where you want that extra spot removal, any deck that's capable of racing your game plan because they apply pressure very quickly. Then we've got 4 copies of Stone Rain, which is here almost exclusively for the mirror match. Now, against opposing Eldrazi decks that are also running Linebreaker and Fleshraker, I don't actually tend to sideboard because I feel like Dismember is more useful than Stone Rain because, killing the opponent's Linebreaker or Fleshraker makes a massive, massive difference in those sorts of matchups. Not to mention, this can also be used to take out Sire of 7 Deaths, so if your opponent's playing that, then I prefer to keep Dismember in as well. But Stone Rain is very useful against the more generic builds that aren't running Linebreaker and Fleshraker, the ramp versions. Now, Stone Rain isn't quite as good here as it is in the previous build I posted because we're not running Labyrinth, so the only way that we've got of casting this on turn 2 is Sprawl or Hierarch, but I still feel like it's worth it to kind of break the symmetry on those kind of mirror matches. However, having said that, if there is a trend in Eldrazi towards Linebreaker or Fleshraker, or towards Sire of 7 Deaths as a response to these sorts of decks, then I think Dismember is more useful, and you could maybe swap Stone Rain out for something else. But right now, whilst people are still more running the generic ramp versions, I feel like Stone Rain is more useful. And then speaking of which, Surgical Extraction, this is the flex slot in the sideboard in my opinion. I guess you could consider Stone Rain a flex slot as well if you're mainly facing builds where Dismember is effective, but I like Surgical at the moment, mainly, firstly because I still see quite a lot of Reanimator after the Jund list that I posted, but also I've seen a reasonable amount of the Dimir Frog decks that are running Unearth Oculus. Some of those builds are running Persist. I've seen some Emperor of Bones decks as well, Emperor of Bones plus Ulamog, and all of those decks can be tricky matchups for Eldrazi if they get off their graveyard synergy, so Surgical really important. But there are a number of other cards you could consider running either in this slot or the Stone Rain slot if you don't feel that's as important. I think running an Artifact or Enchantment removal card, obviously there's a big variety of options you've got there, but that could be very important against decks running Torpor Orb or Goblin Bombardment. I think Thief of Existence, I'll bring that up if you haven't seen it. Thief of Existence could be a really good option for that because it's also an Eldrazi. It doesn't get affected by Torpor Orb if it'll load. Hold on. Oh yeah, here we go. Thief of Existence. This could be a nice option to consider as well. Also gets doubled up off Echoes of Eternity, can kill Goblin Bombardment, can kill Torpor Orb. So that could be an option to consider if people run more Torpor Orb going forwards. But this was kind of a considerate. This is basically my current sideboard setup before the metagame adapts to this particular build. But there are a variety of options you could consider in these 7 slots as the metagame adapts, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's the deck overall. Like I said, having a low to the ground Eldrazi deck that runs some of the more generically powerful cards and then just has a combo top end has felt incredibly strong to me so far. The deck feels very resilient and just generically powerful as well. If you've got any questions about the deck at all, definitely let me know in the comments. Next up, I've got 5 matches of gameplay so you guys can see the deck in action. And I've also got a bunch more gameplay recorded. So I think if I can, I'm going to be putting out additional gameplay videos in the next few days as well. Definitely let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. Either way, hope you enjoyed the video and I'll catch you all in the next one. Big up. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, we can keep this one right. We got Sprawl on 1 into either Fleshraker or Linebreaker on 2. Okay, I was going to say I really hope that we don't get Thought Seized or Spell Pierced here, because if we miss our 3rd land drop, then our hand's pretty rough. But, you know, this is one of the main reasons why I really prefer Sprawl over Mana Dorks, because, you know, it's much more likely... Oh, I shouldn't say anything. I was going to say it's much more likely that Sprawl survives here, but they happen to have the Fragment. Oh, okay, perfect. I was going to say if we miss a 3rd land drop, we're in trouble. Eldrazi Temple is amazing. So now we're going to get Fleshraker in play. I've gone for Fleshraker over Linebreaker because if the opponent is running control, which it looks like they are, then... Sorry, I just got to think here. So I think we're going to go for Kozak's command here. But yeah, I prefer going for Fleshraker because it's much more difficult for them to shut off getting value off this, right? Because the tokens that it produces are a cast trigger rather than, you know, anything else. Now, having said that, you could also maybe argue that getting in for damage with Fleshraker is important. But now that we get these extra tokens in here, and it kind of unlocks our ability to go off here a little bit more, because now we have 3 tokens in play. We can go... Faceless Agent here as well and get more onto the board before the opponent has access to any more counter spells. Now obviously this could play potentially more into a board sweeper, but this is kind of another reason why I like holding on to Fleshraker here, because if the opponent does play like a Divine Purge or a Wrath of God here, we can just follow up with Hasty Creatures, or, you know, we could maybe follow up with Sowing Mycospawn Spawn taking out one of their lands. Oh, interesting. Okay, I think we're just going to slam the Sowing Mycospawn Spawn here. Again, we could go for the Linebreaker here, but we've already got a decent amount of pressure in play. This limits their land ability. It plays through counter spells way more easily. And again, I think I would much prefer to have Linebreaker as a follow-up to a board sweeper, which is getting to the point now where the opponent probably needs to, you know, have a board sweeper to survive here. Wow, Mycospawn Spawn resolves. Kind of surprised to see that. Okay, they do have Deluge, so they're almost certainly just going to be digging for a sweeper here. Wow, they just didn't find one. Okay, sweet. That felt pretty good. So, against control... I mean, Stone Rain is tempting to bring in over Dismember. I think Dismember is the only real slot that I ever really swap out in these sorts of matchups. I do sometimes board out Echoes against decks where I bring in more spot removal, but outside of that, if I'm not bringing spot removal, I usually cut Dismember for something. And like I said, I think Dismember could be important to take out Strict Proctor, potentially. So I'm not 100% sure the right way to sideboard here exactly, because I haven't played this matchup in quite a while. Because Strict Proctor does shut down the ping ability of Fleshraker and Faceless Agent CTB as well. So there is a chance that we should be keeping in Dismember here, especially if they're also running Null Drifter. I didn't see any red mana, so I don't think we need to worry about Flage necessarily. But I have to imagine they're on Lotus Field, and potentially if they're on... Sorry, I just got to think about this for a second. I think we can keep this. It's a little bit risky. I would obviously love to have a Forest here for the Sprawl, but, you know, we've got Mirrex that can fix mana. We've got Eldrazi Temple here, so I think we've got to, you know, keep this and hope. Oh, okay. You can say hope to draw a colored source soon, but, you know, that's the advantage of being on the draw, I guess. But yeah, get Utopia Sprawl on turn 1, and now this is huge because now we can Mycospawn Spawn on turn 2, which is really powerful against, you know, counterspell decks in general. But yeah, so what I was saying there was, if they have Null Drifter in addition to Proctor, then I think it's correct to run Dismember instead. But if their only real target is Strict Proctor, I think it's probably better to run Stone Rain to just, you know, give us a way to close them out quickly. Although I guess since they're on Lotus Field, could be a little bit more tricky doing that because, you know, they can play through Stone Rain more easily if they have Lotus Field into strict proc. So I think if this does go to a game 3, I'm probably supposed to bring the Dismembers back in. So I'm trying to think if we have enough. I don't think we have quite enough to go Mythic Spawn into Echoes of Eternity. And I think getting Echoes into play is really huge here. Now, obviously, the risk here is if they have an answer to Echoes, if they have Get Lost or I guess Fragment Reality isn't as bad because we'd likely get a 3-drop out of the deal. But if we get to untap with Echoes here, I think we just win the game. I mean, even if they don't have, like, it doesn't really matter if they have a counterspell, right? They would need, I guess Consign does it, but, you know, the Echo stays in play and we can just cast another Eldrazi. So if we led on Sowing Mythic Spawn, for example, they might be able to consign both of the triggers to put lands into play, but then we still get the 2 3/3s. If they counter the 3/3s, we still get the lands in play. Oh, they do have Teferi, so... Oh, that's scary. I was going to say they could tuck... If they tuck the Echoes, we're still in a good spot, though, so... I'm really hoping they don't untap and have a piece of removal here. If they don't, then I think we're good, but... Okay, they have a stop during the upkeep. Is this discontinuity? Oh, no, okay, so they're digging for an answer, which feels greedy from the opponent. Maybe they figure that the only way they're winning this game is if they get lucky off the Eldrazi, which, you know, kind of makes sense. But now they're completely tapped out. We're just going to go Faceless Agent, which should, you know, statistically find us a line breaker here because we get 4 looks for it. Okay, we don't find it off the first one, which is a little bit concerning. Okay, there we go, sweet. So... Now we just cast the line breaker. And this is going to be way more than enough for lethal, right? Because it's going to give +6/+6 3 times. I guess +7/+7 now because of the rumble as well. And we find the follow-up line breaker here. So I think if the opponent had used their Teferi to minus the Echoes, then, you know, this would be more of a game. But then we just attack down the Teferi. So I guess the opponent just thought, right, I need to get a bit lucky to win this game, which is definitely the right thing to do from their perspective, I think. But... yeah, pretty easily won that one. That felt really good. Okay, so we're going second here. Oh, if the opponent's actually here, I might have to edit it out if they take a while to get in the game. Oh, no, there we go, sweet. Oh, wow, okay, so this is a definite keep, right? We've got double Eldrazi Temple is so nice with Kozilek's Command, and, you know, if we find another Eldrazi Temple or a Utopia Sprawl for this Stomping Ground, we could potentially cast Echoes of Eternity on turn 3, which is absolutely huge. And then Echoes of Eternity plus Kozilek's Command is really nice as well, because you get to double up on everything, you get to pick new targets for the Kozilek's Command as well. Okay, so Thoughtseize, I mean, we're still going to run out the Eldrazi Temple because ideally we go Temple into Kozilek's Command next turn. Wow, another Thoughtseize. So they're probably going to take the Kozilek's Command, but I'm okay with that because as long as they don't have another Thoughtseize here or like a Jarsel or something, there's a decent chance that we can Echoes relatively soon. Going to jam the Faceless Agent here. Oh, okay, Line Breaker is huge, so we could potentially hold on to this Line Breaker to cast after the Echoes, but, you know, against the deck that's already cast Thoughtseize against us twice, I'm not sure if that's the right play or not. Huh, interesting. Okay, I think what we're going to do here is go for the Faceless Agent, because that enables us to double block if the opponent doesn't have a removal spell here, and a lot of the time, you know, especially if they are just on straight Rakdos rather than Jund, they won't have Abrupt Decay. They might just be relying on Fatal Push as their removal spell of choice, which means that we can double block here and get away with it, get to take out the Goyf without letting it snowball, because you really don't want to let Goyf hit you. I think if I only had a single Faceless Agent, I would just be chump blocking here. So I'm going to risk this. If they have a removal spell, we could get kind of blown out here, but this could clear the way for Echoes of Eternity, and if they are on straight Rakdos rather than Jund, okay, yeah, sweet, we can just resolve Echoes of Eternity, and I very much doubt they'll have any way to remove it. So I think here we'll just go Mountain into Echoes, and that means that the Mirex can be used for coloured mana next turn if we need it. I mean, to be fair, even if they were on Jund, I think there's very few main deck cards that would remove Echoes of Eternity. You know, Abrupt Decay is the main removal, or the main green removal spell that I've seen run. Some people have run Assassin's Trophy a couple of times I've seen recently, but not that many. And then if they are just on straight Rakdos, there's basically no way they have to remove this in the main deck, because, you know, they would need like Feed the Swarm or something. Okay, they do have Nether Goyf as well, so we are on a decent clock, but we should just win next turn, right? We can go Micah Spawn into Line Breaker here, and we can even kick the Micah Spawn. So do we want to take out the coloured mana? I mean, they do have treasures that they can produce off the token. I don't think it really matters, because we should be winning this turn anyway. But now we can go Eldrazi Temple and a red land for this Line Breaker here. Don't think it really matters. Might as well just go for Merrick so we don't lose any unnecessary life. Take out their coloured mana, get 2 Sowing Micah Spawns into play, and then how much would that be? So I'm just trying to figure out the Line Breaker. I think this should be exact lethal if we just buff the Line Breakers, right? You can obviously buff the Micah Spawns as well here, but it's usually safer if you have lethal with the Tramplers, because otherwise they can just chump block the other creatures that don't have trample. So yeah, managed to get there, and obviously force the chump block. So even if they did survive that, they would just be left with a 2/2 and no coloured mana. So I don't think we really won the sideboard here, to be honest. Right, we've got, you know, in these sorts of matchups where I'm not bringing the extra spot removal, Dismember is actually decent in this matchup because it can take out the Goyfs. I've seen Crucius in quite a lot of lists to be able to tutor for the Pyrogoyf, and being able to take that out is really important as well, because even outside of tutoring for Pyrogoyf, Crucius does kind of snowball the game, as we've seen in the past. Still think that's kind of risky to do when Goblin Bombardment's still about, but, you know, I think Dismember's better than the Stone Rain in this matchup, so I don't think there's any real need to sideboard. But yeah, Pyrogoyf is definitely a scary card. It gives them very good reach, so we do need to get off to a decent start in these sorts of matchups. Against, you know, I've mainly seen Jund, and I do think Jund is likely better because Malevolent Rumble is such a good card. I think Jarsor's really nice as well. So I think we can keep this. We don't have red for the Line Breaker, unfortunately, but we've got, you know, a few turns to find it, and we've got other good stuff to play beforehand. Okay, great. So we have Utopia Sprawl now. Now we do have red mana, and now we can go Kozilek's Command X equals 2 on turn 2, which is really big. Let's see what the opponent's got here. Okay, they do have another Thoughtseize, so imagine we lose the Kozilek's Command here, but we've got a lot of good cards, right? We're still on for a turn 4. Echoes with this hand, assuming we draw another land. We can still get Line Breaker down, we can still get Faceless Agent down, so... Wow, Surgical on Kozilek's Command. I mean, it always kind of baffles me when people bring in Surgical against decks that aren't strictly combo or use the graveyard. Unless, the only reason I can think of is if they have enough cards they want to board out that, you know, it's better than some of their other main deck cards, but this sort of thing just doesn't feel... Or I guess if you're running Mill as well, that's another situation where that's useful, but, you know, taking out Kozilek's Command really doesn't do much here. Oh, wow, okay. Micah Spawn on turn 2 is sick here. Now we can go... Sorry, I'm just trying to think if we wanted to get a Mirrex there instead, but I think we just want to ensure that we can go Echoes next turn. Wow, they just ship it back. Wonder what that could be. And then I'll attack him with the Micah Spawn because they've already got an instant in the graveyard. I don't think they can buff Nethergoyf at instant speed. And then next time we should be good. Even if they've got a Thoughtseize here, we can just use Faceless Agent to tutor. I mean, yeah, we should just be good, right? We can just go... I think we'll go Faceless Agent first just to get more Eldrazi into play. So if they do have a spot removal spell for the Line Breaker, we still have the second one. But it looks like Arena's giving away priority. They don't have anything here, which is kind of a surprise. Maybe the opponent just kept a slower hand here. And now we can go Micah Spawn, because then we can get Eldrazi Temple and another red land just to get more bodies in place so that the Line Breaker buff is even more substantial. And then we just go Line Breaker. And that's going to be +8/+8 4 times. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, so we got there nice. Arrogance Red Rupee shouts out. He's a really good player. Wonder what they're playing. I think they were on Val combo last time I faced them, so Could be the same, could have changed deck, so I don't want to read too much into that. Either way, I think this hand's good, right? We got potential Kozilek's Command on turn 2 if we need, or we can go Rumble. Don't have the red mana for Linebreaker yet, but, you know, Rumble should give us a look for it, and obviously we got a couple draw steps to find it as well. Okay, so they're not on Val anymore, they're on Eldrazi. Hopefully we should get a glimpse into what sort of build they're running through the Exile. Okay, thought not see it, and they're on Simic by the looks of it from the Talisman and the Breeding Pool as well. So I think since they're on Simic, we can just run out Eldrazi Temple without needing to worry. We don't have to worry about Stone Rain or anything like that. And getting Eldrazi Temple out is nice here because if we draw a second Eldrazi Temple, then we can potentially Kozilek's Command X equals 2. And even if we can't, we can still Flesh Raker, we can still Rumble if we want. We can still Linebreaker if we draw a red land as well, which is an important thing as well. Okay, so they got access to 3 mana this turn. See what they do. I think with the current hand, we're probably going to prioritize... oh, wow, Temple's kind of scary. But yeah, I think we're probably going to prioritize getting Flesh Raker down here. I think we're also going to use Kozilek's Command X equals 0 here just to take out the token and get us an extra card. Because we've already got other good options. And taking out this token here is really big because it cuts them off 7 mana for next turn. Okay, nice. So now we got another Eldrazi Temple, which is pretty huge. So now we're not too far away from Echoes. We can... we're 1 mana away from being able to kick the Mythic Spawn here, which is a bit annoying, but we can potentially go Mythic Spawn into Linebreaker next turn, into Echoes, which, you know, even though we wouldn't have a guaranteed Eldrazi in hand, Echoes still doubles up on your Linebreaker and Flesh Raker triggers if you've already got them in play, and obviously Rumble can hopefully help us find another Linebreaker or another Faceless Agent to find a Linebreaker. Okay, interesting they don't run out the Temple. Okay, they got Utopia Sprawl here then. Also very nice we don't have to worry about Ugin's Binding. That's something else that we do need to be a little bit concerned about, but with Echoes of Eternity, I don't think Ugin's Binding is actually that bad at the moment anyway. Okay, so here I think we're just going to be going Mythic Spawn into Linebreaker, most likely. Right, we get a carryover mana from the Eldrazi Temple. We get a token from the Flesh Raker. Ah, there is the Binding. Okay, so we need to be wary of that now. Whatever we put into play, we need to be willing to have it bounced, essentially. So I'm just trying to think whether we want to go for Stomping Ground, Mountain, or Mirex. I don't think there's really much of a risk going Stomping Ground unless they're on Flesh Raker. But if they don't have it in play already, I don't think we need to be too concerned about that, really. And then I think I'm just going to... I don't know whether to replay the Flesh Raker or go for Linebreaker. I think I'm going to go for Linebreaker here because if they do bounce our board, we'll have at least got in for some extra damage. Whereas if we go for Flesh Raker... then, you know, we're 5 damage worse off, essentially. And I don't think there's too much of a difference between running the two out here, really. So I'm expecting them to play a 7-drop and bounce our board here, but that should hopefully use up the Ugin's Binding and allow us to get off Echoes of Eternity. Okay, there's a Talisman. They still have enough mana to go for a 7-drop here, though. Okay, they evoke the Null Drifter, so presumably they bounce our board here. I kind of hope they do, in a way. Now, obviously, if they have another Ugin's Binding or a World Breaker, that would be a little bit rough if we do go for Echoes, but, you know, typically most of the Eldrazi or the Simic lists I've seen don't tend to run more than 3 Ugin's Bindings, so... Plus, it just enables us to combo kill the following turn if we get to untap with it. So, I think I'm going to go Rumble into Echoes here. I don't think we need another Echoes. I mean, I guess if they have World Breaker, we maybe do, but I think with our current hand, it's better to just grab another land because we have a lot of gas in hand right now. So I think it's just more important to keep ensuring we keep hitting land drops so that we can, even if the opponent does bounce Echoes, we could just go Flesh Raker, Linebreaker next turn, and that's pretty good. Or Flesh Raker, Mythic Spawn, Flesh Raker, Linebreaker. I don't know. I'll have to figure out the exact mana, but even if they do have a way to remove Echoes here, we've still got a good follow-up. And if they don't remove it, we just win next turn. So I think we should be good. Sire of 7 Deaths could be an issue, but Well, I mean, it could be an issue if we didn't have Fleshraker here, because Fleshraker is a really nice way to beat Sire. Sire is tricky if you're relying on Linebreaker entirely, though. But yeah, we should just win off Fleshraker here without even needing the Linebreaker. I mean, we have enough mana to do both anyway, which is what we're going to do. But so now we start pinging with the Fleshraker. Now we cast the second Fleshraker, and then we get double the tokens, and each token entering pings 4 times here because each Fleshraker doubles up as well. So going to be way more than lethal from what we've got. So here, since we've not seen Fleshraker or Linebreaker from the opponent's side, I'm going to bring in Stone Rain. Now, having said that, I have been thinking about cutting the Stone Rains for Thief of Existence, because there are a lot of Eldrazi matchups where I want the Dismember. If they're playing Fleshraker, Linebreaker, or Sire of Seven Deaths, then I think Dismember is worth keeping in over Stone Rain. So I think that's if those builds become more popular and builds not running any of those cards don't see as much play, then I think you could probably just replace Stone Rain with something like Thief of Existence, which is useful against Goblin Bombardment, Torpor Orb, Mind Stone, Talismans in the mirror match. Although having said that, this whole argument is if we're keeping Dismember in the mirror match, then we don't need it. But I think Torpor Orb is a potential issue, so I think that is a pretty reasonable swap if Torpor Orb starts seeing more play. Because currently we just don't have any answers for it in the 75, and shutting off Faceless Agent and the ping ability of Fleshraker is tricky. So I think we can keep this. Don't have Stone Rain until turn 3, but we do have turn 2 Linebreaker or Faceless Agent here. So, and that's the other thing as well. Stone Rain's not as good in this build as it was in my previous build because I'm not running Ugin's Labyrinth, so we have fewer ways to cast it on turn 2. So if there is a shift, which I kind of predict there will be, to more builds running Linebreaker and Fleshraker, more builds running Sire of Seven Deaths to counteract Linebreaker specifically, then yeah, Stone Rain becomes another flex slot. You can just run whatever else you want in the sideboard there. Okay, interesting. So they shock in the breeding pool. Actually, wait, thinking about it, I did that way too quickly, because if they shock in the breeding pool, I think the 2 reasons they could have here are either Ugin's Binding or Consign. And I mean, I think with the current hand, I would prefer them to consign the Linebreaker and the Faceless Agent Resolve. But if they have Ugin's Binding, I'll Dismember. Interesting. So that makes me think they have a Binding or a Consign, but they just didn't want to use it on the Fleshraker. Or there's no... It doesn't make sense for them to shock in the breeding pool otherwise. They pass back again, so... I mean, I think we're just going to go for Stone Rain here, right? We could obviously go for Faceless Agent, but it's not really that mana efficient. And it doesn't, it's not super impactful right now anyway. And I'm going to target the Ugin's Labyrinth because it does give them the opportunity to put Devour back in hand, but it looks like they've got Kozilek's Command. If they do tap out for that, then we not only take out the land, but the Devourer as well. Even if they do choose to put Devourer back into hand, though, shutting off 2 generic mana as opposed to 2 mana that can only be used to cast Eldrazi does make a difference, right? Because it shuts off their ability to cast, their Talismans and their other non-Eldrazi cards. Kozilek's Command is a little scary, though, especially because we've flooded out pretty badly this game. We haven't drawn particularly well. But having said that, they are down to just 2 lands here, right? So if they do crack all of these spawn tokens to ramp into something, they don't actually have that much mana left after that. And if we do go Faceless Agent into Fleshraker, for example, we can stonewall, most of their 7 drops that aren't Sire, if they are running Sire. I wonder what this could be. Mycospawn Spawn would be rough here, right? Because then we'd just be down to 2 lands effectively. Yeah, okay, that is Mycospawn Spawn. So we presumably lose the Eldrazi Temple here, yeah. And then they presumably get another Eldrazi Temple, which You know, they've been manually tapping land, so it makes me think they've got like a 3-drop of some sort here. An Eldrazi 3-drop. Oh, they get Blast Zone, okay. I mean, Blast Zone, being able to kill our 3-drops at instant speed is pretty scary. Wow, another land. So we're not drawing particularly well this game, but, you know, we can still go Faceless Agent and, you know, finding Myca Spawn will be really nice here. Want to make sure we've got colorless land, enough colorless lands here, so if we draw Kozak's Command, we can use it. Okay, there's the Consign. So they did have Consign, presumably was what they had when they shocked in the breeding pool. Just chose not to use it on the Line Breaker because they already had a Dismember. So now we're completely out of gas, which is kind of rough, but there's always a chance the opponent is as well, right? They have the mana, but if they don't have a top end to cast it, it doesn't really make a difference. Oh, wow. Another Myca Spawn. I mean, thankfully, it doesn't really matter what land they take out here. I mean, we're in a bad position either way, but we're not out of the game. We can still cast basically everything we draw. As we have enough mana to cast. Or we have the right colours, essentially. So I think from this point onwards, we've just got to hope to draw something and hope the opponent doesn't draw more top end. Ooh, okay, that's pretty good. I mean, obviously we have to run out the Mirrex here to be able to cast it, but that should hopefully at least draw us into something and give us more mana to cast the more expensive cards if we do find them. So because of that, I'm definitely not going to chump with the 0/1 token this turn anyway. Okay, Talisman. Really hope they don't have a more expensive card. Okay, nothing else for the board. That's huge. So now we actually have a chance. Just got to hope we find something good off the draw here. Okay, definitely bottoming more lands. Ooh, okay, Myca Spawn's a big one. That's pretty big. So now we can trade with the Myca Spawn in combat, hopefully. And we should be able to now, if we do get another Eldrazi Temple here, you know, hopefully they don't have another Consign. Let's see. But if they don't, then everything is a good top deck, right? Even Echoes. Wow, okay, no Consign, but they do put Blast Zone up to X=3. That's something we'll have to try and play through somehow, right? Because, you know, most of our action is our 3-drops. But, I mean, right now our focus is just trying to stay alive against these Myca Spawns. Don't want to get ahead of myself. So, really hope they don't have another removal spell here. If we can trade with this Myca Spawn, we've got a shot, I think. Okay, so we do get to trade off here. I don't think we want to trade here. I think the extra mana is more useful. Okay, and they've got Devour as well. I mean, thankfully we have Rumble here to produce another blocker. Ooh, and there's Echoes. Okay. So I think we have to just jam Echoes, and then... I mean, this is risky, but I think I'm going to go for a Rumble here as well. I mean, I guess it's not risky because we have the same amount of champ blockers in play, but this just hopefully finds an agent or a... Oh, okay, there is an agent. An agent or a line breaker, I was going to say. So now we just got to pray that we survive the turn. If we survive the turn and they don't draw a Consign, I think we're good here. I mean, obviously we do have to play through the Blast Zone, but Faceless Agent should hopefully find us a Myca Spawn, so that we can hopefully commit enough 3-drops to the board where they're forced to crack the Blast Zone, but we have enough follow-up in our hand to go for Line Breaker again next turn. Oh, okay, backup Line Breaker is huge here. So now we can go for Faceless Agent. We get... Wow, hopefully... Let's see if they've got Consign first. Okay, they don't have Consign. That's huge, that's huge. So now we get 2 blockers in play. We do find the Myca Spawn, which is big, so even if they do crack the Blast Zone here, we should have at least a couple of 3/3s next turn. And then I think I'm going to put Flesh Raker in play as well. Do we just go double Temple here? Yeah, I think we just go double Temple so that we have a really... Actually, wait, that was bad because now we don't have enough red for multiple line breakers next turn. Yeah, that was a mistake for sure. I should have definitely got another red source there. What was I thinking? So now they presumably cracked the blast zone, right? Yeah, I really hope that doesn't come back to bite me. I mean, presumably they just attack in next turn anyway, so as long as they don't have any blockers back, a single line breaker should be good enough here, I think. And obviously we've got to hope they don't draw another Ugin's Binding or something here. But yeah, not getting another red source off that Micah Spawn was just crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so they don't have anything here. That's huge. Surely they attack, right? They don't know we've got line breaker. They force a double block here. So yeah, we have to block. At least we trade off the Micah Spawns. And yeah, we should just win here, right? Even if we don't draw another red source. Okay, Faceless Agent guarantees it. But yeah, we definitely should have got another red source off the Micah Spawn there. I guess now we can go Micah Spawn and grab another red source. But, you know, had we not drawn the Faceless Agent, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So, and I guess we can just go Flesh Raker first. I mean, yeah, Flesh Raker kills here anyway, but we needed to have contingencies with that extra red source in case we didn't find it and in case they didn't attack in there. But yeah, now we should be good, right? We go Flesh Raker, pings them to death anyway, but even if it didn't, we could then go Flesh Raker into Line Breaker and, you know, have way more than lethal. So yeah, kind of crazy we managed to win this game considering we were down to 2 lands for a little bit earlier. But yeah, got there, nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this is good, right? We've got Utopia Sprawl on 1 into Linebreaker or... Well, I guess we can't Kozilek's Command on 2 because we don't have another colourless land yet, but... So yeah, definitely going to lead on Utopia Sprawl on 1 here. Okay, so Steam Vents into Tamiyo is interesting. Makes me think it's probably Affinity, although it still could potentially be Izzet Wizards if they're running a more grindy build, maybe. Let's see what else they've got here. Okay, so they plot Slickshot Show Off, so that makes me think... Oh, okay, Eldrazi Temple is huge here. But yeah, Slickshot Show Off, definitely... Wizards by the looks of things, and to be fair, I'm very glad this is a Tamiyo, not a Symmetry Sage, right? This should just help not take as much damage, right? It slows their clock down a fair bit. But yeah, Eldrazi Temple's really big here, because now we can Kozilek's Command X equals 2 on the Slickshot Show Off, which is a big deal. I mean, having said that, you know, even if we hadn't drawn that, we could have still gone Flesh Raker into Kozilek's Command, hopefully if we draw another colourless land. But yeah, just speeding the Kozilek's Command up by a turn here is a very big deal. So they go for Consider... Actually, maybe I'm supposed to Kozilek's Command now in case they're running Maindeck Spell Pierce. I mean, it's not likely, but it's a possibility. But, I mean, I guess the other thing is maybe it's better to wait, right? There's a good chance they tap out here, casting spells in order to maximise the amount of damage the Show Off does. But yeah, if we're worried about Spell Pierce, we're probably supposed to do this in response to the Consider, so they hopefully don't find one. And then I'm going to choose to put tokens in play rather than scrying, because we've already got good gas in hand, and getting ahead on mana is huge here, because it now enables us to either kick the Micah Spawn or potentially go Flesh Raker into Linebreaker. Okay, Ribble Chanty, always want to crack the token in response, because if the Ribble Chanty doesn't actually kill the creature, the intensity doesn't go up, which means that, you know, especially for Chorus to the Ages? Wow, how am I forgetting the name of it? The Draw Chorus spell, Hymn to the Ages, that's the one. That will still be at base intensity. Okay, so they flip the Tamiyo, but, you know, we have Linebreaker here, so I think rather than using the Micah Spawn now, I think I'm going to go Flesh Raker, Linebreaker instead, and then that gets the Flesh Raker going, gets the pinging, helps to accelerate us to enable us to either Kozilek's Command for more next turn or potentially kick the Micah Spawn if we feel that's the better line. But yeah, getting to take out the Tameo here is huge, because Tameo can be a concern, you know, especially if you're just relying on Fleshraker and you know, smaller creatures to actually apply pressure. Okay, so they do have another show off, and it has prowess on top of its, you know, natural ability because of the teachings. But thankfully, we have the follow-up Kozilek's Command here, which is a big deal. And I imagine that's what we'll go for. I mean, we'll obviously see what we draw here. Wow, another Eldrazi Temple. I mean, I don't think this is... I mean, obviously, it's going to allow us to go Micah Spawn into Kozilek's Command if we want. But, you know, I think we would have been good just going Kozilek's Command here anyway, right? So now we can kick the Kozilek's Command, take away the Fiery Islet, which gives them, you know, less looks at gas here. And then we go another Eldrazi Temple. And then we can go X equals 2 on the Kozilek's Command. And then I think I'm going to go Scry Draw here. Obviously, producing more 1/1s increases our clock because of Fleshraker. But we are, you know, if we whiff on the Rumble here, then it's better to have more gas, I think. We're in a winning position anyway. So getting to get game 1 against Wizards is huge. Here we're going to bring in Sheverside as extra interaction. And typically when I bring in Sheverside, it's usually in matchups like Wizards or Auras or Val, where if you can keep them off the board, they really struggle to do anything impactful. So you don't need to go that far above the opponent with stuff like an Echoes of Eternity, really. Not to mention, you know, especially against a deck like Auras, having your, you know, tapping out for an Echoes and then having it hit by a Sheltered by Ghost is an absolutely brutal exchange. And then obviously, you know, Wizards can have Into the Floodmoor and stuff like that as well. So I think I'd like, you know, in these matchups where if you keep the opponent off the board, you know, really slow their game plan down significantly. So this hand is great, right? We've got Utopia Sprawl on 1, Kozilek's Command or Micah Spawn on turn 2. Okay, they go for Arcanist. I mean, now we can just go Micah Spawn, get a red source, Sheverside, which seems pretty good. Obviously, we miss out on getting the Eldrazi Temple, but taking out the Arcanist is a really big deal here. And I'm going to go for Mountain as opposed to Stomping Ground because we've already got Mirrex, we don't need the utility land, and we don't want to take any unnecessary damage against Wizards. Oh, wow, okay, opponent just keeps it up. I mean, we were pretty far ahead already, which is kind of crazy. Okay, so we're going first here. And, I mean, this isn't great, but I think on the play in the dark we can keep it, right? We got Rumble on turn 2, into Fleshraker. Hopefully we find something good off the Rumble, and then we're kind of off to the races. I think Fleshraker into Agent is also nice, because, you know, it makes... Once you start training colour spells together, Agent becomes easy to cast, and then it triggers Fleshraker to get you another token, and then finds you another card that you can hopefully cast, you know, that Fleshraker helps you accelerate into. Okay, so... Opponent goes blue, so they're either on Simic Eldrazi or maybe the... okay, Micah Spawn's nice here, but yeah, they're either probably on Simic Eldrazi or the Battle Crier combo deck. I've seen that a few times recently. Oh, interesting. That's a cool tech with Fleshraker. Oh, okay. Eldrazi Temple's nice. It means we don't have to sack the token to cast the Micah Spawn, and means if we get another Eldrazi Temple here that we can cast our own Fleshraker here, which is pretty nice. And then this is the kind of spot where Faceless Agent is nice, right? Because it gives us just a good mana sink here, right? We go Faceless Agent, you know, either find another Fleshraker, a Line Breaker, or Micah Spawn, which is great, or we find another Faceless Agent, which we can cast fairly easily. Oh, wow. Okay, double Fleshraker. That's scary when we don't have a Dismember or a Kozilek's Command. Really got to hope they don't have a... Wow, Case of the Shattered Pact. I can't even remember what that does. Search... Oh. Search basic land. Okay, so they're not ever solving this, unless I'm missing something. So it's just a tutor... It's just a colorless card that finds lands. Interesting. But, I mean, I think we're in a decent spot here as long as they don't have Kozilek's Command here. or just a way to ping us to death. Basically, that's what I'm worried about. So we get the Faceless Agent down. Obviously, we'll see what we find here. Another Flesh Raker would be nice to kind of even the battlefield a little bit. Line Break would also be nice as well. Any hit would be nice here, right? We go Agent, we go again. If we find a Line Breaker, that's big. If we find a Myca Spawn, then, you know, we're pretty close to kicking it again. And then we could take out their land with a Utopia Sprawl on it. Although I'm not really sure how much of an impact that would have. When they've already got Flesh Raker producing a bunch of tokens. I'm going to attack him with my Flesh Raker here because I feel like if they... You know, we're in a winning position regardless here, right? I just want to trade off the Flesh Rakers because I feel like the only way we're losing this is if they have a way to ping us to death with the Flesh Rakers. And if we take out one of theirs, then it's much less likely to happen, I think. So, see what the opponent's got here. Okay, Ugin's binding on the Flesh Raker. I mean, they're starting to get in for a lot of damage here. Thankfully, we still have the Faceless Agent to kind of incentivize them not to attack. But if they have a way to bounce our board here... I mean, they have enough mana, right? Oh, no, they don't have enough mana yet, but... Oh, okay. I was going to say, unless they happen to have a Null Drifter, which they do. So I think this is just... We're dead here, right? Because they bounce our board. They've already got 4 power in play. And they're going to ping us exactly 2 more down to 4 off this Null Drifter. So, yeah, opponent has a very good start here for sure. So yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. I feel like they needed a specific sequence. I guess if they had Kozak's Command, we're also dead. So, and then since they're running Flesh Raker, I don't think we really want to sideboard. So yeah, the more I think about it, maybe Stone Rain is a little bit redundant, especially because we don't have Ugin's Labyrinth. So yeah, there's a chance if there's anything else you want to run in the sideboard, then maybe that's the spot to do it in. So this hand obviously has no colorless lands, which is a little bit awkward with the Flesh Raker, but we've got Hierarch into, hopefully Rumble can find us one, into Myca Spawn can get us Eldrazi Temples, so we do need a little bit of help with this hand, but, you know, I feel like we've got a lot of looks for it. Okay, so useful that a couple of their utility lands are gone on that exile. Oh, okay, that's a nice draw. Now we can go for the turn 2 Myca Spawn, which is massive. Get another Eldrazi Temple. And then we can go Flesh Raker into Rumble. Hopefully find another 3-drop. Okay, there's the opponent's Flesh Raker, so they got it again. Oh, okay, Dismember's big. Dismember's very big here. So we go for Flesh Raker first, and then we'll go Rumble, see what we hit. Ooh, okay, Line Break is big. Now we can shock in the Stomping Grounds, go Line Breaker, and then I think I'm going to attack before using the Dismember here, because that will give me an insight into whether the opponent is willing to give up the Flesh Raker or not, right? If they are willing to just, you know, chump to save damage here, then that probably means they've got a second one, I'd imagine. And if they don't block, then it's obviously important to the opponent, and we can just Dismember before they get a chance to start triggering it. So take out the Flesh Raker here. And I can't think of anything that would save them here, honestly. I mean, famous last words, there might be something, but I think we should be good here, right? Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops it up. So that felt pretty good. I am glad that we got the Dismember here. I think, you know, Flesh Raker can really snowball the game if it's left unchecked. And, I mean, interesting that they're on Simic, though, so we don't need to worry about Line Breaker, but we've seen Null Drifter, and taking out that before it starts using the Annihilator is also useful. And there's also a chance they're on Sire of 7 Deaths, which can be an issue if we're relying on Line Breaker, and you can often use Dismember as a combat trick to take it out, right? It is very painful. You've got to pay 4 life for the Dismember and 7 for the ward, but, you know, Simic Eldrazi doesn't really apply that much pressure to your life total unless they have Flesh Raker, so you can usually get away with that, and then, you know, if you have a line breaker or a 3 power creature like a Myca Spawn or whatever, you can force them into a trade there, basically. So we'll lead on Utopia Sprawl here, and then likely just go for Fleshraker next turn off the Mirrex. Okay, there is Eldrazi Temple, and they get a land. Okay, so just run out the Fleshraker here, and then almost certainly going to be Myca Spawn, maybe into Dismember if they have a creature. They do have access to a lot of mana already, which is pretty scary. And we have Sprawl, which they can obviously target with Devourer. So interesting to see what they get off the Myca Spawn here, whether they need the Eldrazi Temple for a 7-drop. Yeah, okay, they do go for the Eldrazi Temple. See if they have a Fleshraker. Okay, they don't. Another Kozilek's Command is interesting, but I think we're just going to go for Myca Spawn here. You know, very important in case they've got another Myca Spawn or a World Breaker in order to hit our lands, that we have some more acceleration of our own. And getting Fleshraker online is pretty big. Now, we could dismember the Myca Spawn just to attack, but I don't think that's worth it. Right, because we know they have Fleshraker, and there's a chance they have Sire of 7 Deaths, which could really... You know, we're not close enough to using Kozilek's Command to remove that yet. So I think holding on to Dismember is important here. Okay, and they got Null Drifter as well, which they just go for the full cost on. So I will use Dismember on that, and I'm glad I held it back. So happy to trade off the 3/3s here. And then we can just Dismember the Null Drifter. And now we've got Kozilek's Command. Oh, wow. Now we've got a crazy amount for Kozilek's Command. So I think we want to hold open red mana here, right? So we need 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah. So I want to hold open a red mana to find Line Breaker here, if possible, or have it as a potential top deck, and then we can obviously go for a second Kozilek's Command if we don't find it. Okay, we do find it, and we find another Kozilek's Command. So going to pull Line Breaker to the top, and then have Kozilek's Command as a follow up for next turn. Ping them a bunch with the Fleshraker. I mean, I think this should be lethal unless they have Dismember here. I mean, even if they have Dismember, I think they're dead to the second Kozilek's Command, right? They Dismember the Line Breaker, and then we can just command again for X equals 4. But yeah, it looks like they don't have anything, so we should just be good here. Yeah, we got there. Nice.